Just as there have been a lot of abilities across the history of League of Legends that came and went, an equal number of items have also been added and taken out of the game over the years. So many in fact, that if you were to check out the wiki, there are well over 100 unique items no longer in the game. More if you count the ones that are technically still here, but altered exclusively for rotating game modes like Arena, not for Summoner's Rift. Having made a number of videos on removed items in the past, I wanted to make a follow-up episode to one of the first ones I ever made. Only this time around, it's gonna be formatted like a removed abilities episode where I go through each item one at a time, explain what they did, and then discuss why they were taken out of the game. For today's episode, I thought it best to make a mini retrospective on mythic items, especially on account of a non-negligible number of people wishing they'd come back. So let's see if any of these items can make a return, maybe next year. First order of business I want to talk about is Everfrost, one of the most unique items in League's history for being, I believe, the only one in 17 years this game has been out for to ever feature hard crowd control on an item. Throughout the game's tenure, there have been a handful of items with the ability to slow targets. Frozen Mallet, Frost Queen's Claim, Rylai's, but never one that could apply hard CC, and for good reason. It opens up an entire can of worms on balance, since the power budget of a champion is often contingent on whether they do or don't have hard CC. In the case of Everfrost, it was an extremely powerful item, providing a healthy balance of ability power, health, mana, and ability haste. With the mythic passive granting 15 bonus ability power per legendary item, it was the perfect combination of offense and defense. But the item active is where things got a bit dicey. On cast, it would project a blast of damage in a cone to slow all enemies by 65% for 1.5 seconds. Even that alone made this item quite powerful. Having an AoE slow of that magnitude can do wonders in a trade or a fight. However, if you managed to hit someone within the center of the cone, they would be rooted for the same duration instead. That is right, not only did this item have a 1.5 second root, but an AoE 1.5 second root at that. Curiously, Everfrost did not become an overnight sensation. It was actually on the underpowered side for quite a few patches, enough to warrant some pretty major buffs to its stats, item active, and even build path. Once that was all taken care of though, many mages began to abuse it. Having a 1.5 second root that was honestly pretty easy to land effectively guaranteed important sources of engage, such as Aura Charm, Silas Chains, what have you. Champions already known for their lockdown capability like TF and Lissandra took Everfrost to further supplement their ability to keep you stuck for a ridiculous amount of time. Eventually, the root duration had to be nerfed from 1.5 seconds down to 1, and even then it was still extremely broken on those who benefited from it. That said, it managed to stick around for a fair length of time, 3 years at that. It wasn't an overpowered item to the same extent as some others I'll be talking about, but it sure as hell was a questionable idea to give it to champions who depended on skill shots to start their combo. Silas having a lockdown or Ryze having a 3-second total root was not fun to go up against. Could there be a possibility for Everfrost to come back? Doubtful. Hard crowd control is a line in the sand items should never cross in my opinion. It should be a property of the champion only. Speaking of an item that was overpowered beyond belief, you guys notice how over the past couple of years, Camille hasn't really been dominating top lane the way she used to until a recent buff. Mind you, that was also due to the changes to lane structure, but point being, a lot of that was as a result of Divine Sunderer, one of the most broken items to ever exist in the game. If ever there was an item that upon purchase could literally consider that champion to be full build, it was this thing. Offering a modest amount of AD and a nice chunk of HP and ability haste, it carried a Spellblade passive. But to distinguish it from Triforce's more DPS heavy nature, the original intent for this one was to be more of a tank busting sustain item than pure damage. Just one problem, Divine Sunderer was almost always the better option over Triforce on the vast majority of Spellblade champions because more often than not it would straight up just out DPS Triforce on top of everything else it had. The Spellblade proc for this item did bonus max health damage on hit 12% at one point, which is insane. Further, it would heal for half the damage dealt on melees, basically 6% of the target's max HP. Initially, it was supposed to be an answer to tanks, but due to how high the max health damage was, not to mention that it gave a ridiculous amount of healing, you were out of your mind to build Triforce over this. As if that wasn't bad enough, Sunderer had easily the best mythic passive in the game, 5% armor and magic penetration, or 20% at full build, making it damn near impossible to itemize against, since ordinarily you respond to max health damage by building armor and MR, but then Sunderer gave penetration anyway. While any physical Spellblade user could abuse this, Camille in particular exploited Sunderer to the absolute limit. As you know, her Precision Protocol's second activation converts a portion of all damage dealt, including bonus damage, into true damage. Factoring the Spellblade of Sunderer, and she gained % max health true damage, causing her Qs to go from 200 or so damage to like 600 plus with a single item. Lord have mercy on you if you were a tank, you'd be losing half your HP with a single Q, while she would heal for like 200 HP every time. Divine Sunderer did tons of damage and healed for tons of damage. They even tried to nerf the max health damage over and over again, causing it to only do 4% max health in its final iteration. But the immense healing and mythic passive made this item simply way too effective on the likes of Camille, Fiora, Jax, Wukong, Vi, Nasus, etc. Now can this item come back? Possibly. If they took away the healing and mythic passive and only kept the percent health damage, then perhaps. Or alternatively, they could keep the healing and take away the percent health damage to make it solely for sustain and not tank busting. Bottom line, it shouldn't do both. The next item we'll go over is one that, like Everfrost, opened a Pandora's box of possibilities that completely changed the way we saw champion capability, Gale Force. A common weakness of marksmen that serves to balance out their high damage output is their vulnerability, both as a result of their low defense and low mobility. In order to compensate for Jinx, Kog'Maw, and Twitch's extreme carry potential, if you can get on top of them or conversely run away from them, you can deal with their pressure rather easily. What would happen if they were suddenly given a mobility tool beyond Flash though? Enter Gale Force. Gale Force was a remarkably powerful item predicated on movement as opposed to shield bow's durability and Kraken Slayer's DPS. The item active would have you dash in a set direction, then fire 3 bolts at the nearest enemy for magic damage. Not a short distance either, Gale Force could dash up to 425 units, almost on par with an actual champion dash. The bolt damage wasn't anything to scoff at either, especially against enemies at low health. A rather simple item to understand, but it was a truly game-changing one for some champions. Kraken Slayer offered more damage output and Shield Bow gave you burst protection, but Gale Force was a situationally good pick for champions who needed the extra movement to either sidestep a key ability or get within striking distance of enemies. Now you had to contend with the possibility of otherwise entirely immobile champions having the capacity to avoid anything you might have up your sleeve, and it was on a relatively short cooldown too when it first came out, only 90 seconds. Not only did Gale Force add a second layer of defense on top of Flash, but it also made it so you could hold back on burning Flash in situations where you were forced to use it despite it not being worth it long term to do so. This item added an entire new facet of combat to marksmen. A Jhin who could line up force shot then dash in to nuke you for big damage, a Jinx with a Flash who could sidestep a Malphite ultimate regardless. While it wasn't by any means overpowered, just like with Everfrost, combat mobility is something that should be reserved only for champions innately. Standardizing it was partly the reason discussion surrounding mobility creep was so prevalent throughout the early 2020s. In essence, on general principle, I don't think it would be wise to have Gale Force in the game. The same applies to the other mobility-based items, Prowler's Claw and Stridebreaker. To clarify, Stridebreaker is still in the game today, but a core aspect of the item active was taken out very early on in the Mythic item era, and for good reason. These items all serve the same purpose, wherein they would give you a dash plus something else on top of that. In the case of Prowlers, it was a point-and-click dash that would send you behind the target enemy champion, dealing a bit of damage and increasing all damage you dealt to them for the next 3 seconds. Meanwhile, Stridebreaker was a free target dash with an AoE slow on it. Based on empirical data, Prowlers and Stridebreaker were noticeably more impactful to the metagame and were handled more urgently than Gale Force, reason being the champions who could abuse those items were more significant in quantity and effect. For example, Rek'Sai and Pyke were 2 champions that could afford to go lethality and as well had major incentives to be right next to their target. Prowlers dramatically amplified their already wide threat radius and made landing their respective engage tools practically unavoidable. Even more so, Stridebreaker broke the Juggernaut class, famously known for their poor mobility, by allowing them to gap close on their targets, overriding quite possibly the single biggest thing keeping them from destroying everyone. Collectively, the existence of dash items led to too many exploits that went far beyond the scope of what a champion was intended to be capable of, hence why all 3 of them were functionally removed from the game. Now for those wondering why those 3 and not Protobelt, I think the reason they're okay with Protobelt being in the game is because very few mages actually build Protobelt. Only about half a dozen champions build it, and those half dozen don't produce outcomes anywhere near as polarizing as the Darius with the Stridebreaker dash or Urgot with Prowler's Claw. Long and short of it is, mobility is a very dangerous property to globalize. Second to last item will be Goredrinker, another big player during the Mythic item era. Unlike all the ones we talked about so far, which broke fundamental champion design constraints, Goredrinker was by all accounts a stat stick. A very practical one, but a stat stick all the same. It gave a healthy spread of AD, ability haste, health, and later down the road it also provided Omnivamp. Focusing on the original Goredrinker, notable about this item was that it carried both an item passive and active. The item active had you deal damage in a circle around you that healed you for a portion of your missing health for every enemy champion hit. So basically, it was like a Darius Q, but anywhere in the circle would give you the heal. When putting it that way, that would be quite a powerful ability to have on a champion, much less an item. Matter of fact, Goredrinker Active had the potential to heal even more than a Darius Q due to the base heal plus the missing health, whereas Darius Q was only missing health. Additionally, the healing on Decimate caps out at 3 enemy champions. Goredrinker could heal from all 5 if you pulled it off. Goredrinker's premise was general power and sustain, already making it an appealing choice to any physical damage dealer. The stat spread it gave made it usable on just about any melee class, Juggernaut, Diver, Assassin, Skirmisher, what have you, since the purpose it was meant to serve could be universally appreciated. What caused it to be so problematic when it first came out didn't pertain to what it did, rather how well it did it. Goredrinker was too practical. Again, the stats are great. AD, health, ability haste, and even a bit of regen. Thirsting Slash did 110% of your AD in damage, giving you basically an AoE basic attack in an area, plus the heal you got from it. Champions without sustain suddenly could heal a ton. Most importantly, however, was the item passive, increasing your AD by up to 15% based on your missing health, of which you would obtain the full value at a quarter health or less. 15% AD. Depending on how much you already had, Goredrinker could supply a potential 40 to 60 more attack damage on top of the 45 it already gave. The item was so overtuned that even assassins began to build it, as it would ironically give more DPS to their kit than the actual assassin mythic items. Plus, accessing the full power of Goredrinker was pretty easy. Again, the active had a generous AoE. You could use it against your lane opponent while keeping a decently safe pace away from them to avoid taking damage. Moreover, Juggernauts can fight for a long time even at low HP, letting them tap into the full effects of the bonus AD passive. The reason they took Goredrinker out of the game despite nerfing it to no longer be overtuned was ultimately because of build diversity. It was too good on too many champions in light of how unconditional and universal it was. So in the interest of avoiding one item being purchased by a third of all champions in the game, they decided to remove it from the game altogether. We have enough time for one more, I think, and I'm gonna go with Crown of the Shattered Queen, a rather interesting item with a distinct niche to it that's basically an inverse example of Protobelt vs Gale Force Prowess and Stridebreaker, where the class the item was originally intended for was way too good at abusing it compared to a different class that wasn't as overpowering with it. Like with Everfrost, Crown was meant to be a more utility-focused AP mythic item compared to the more DPS-heavy ones like Ludens. Of course, they provided all the essentials, ability power, health, mana, and haste, but unlike the others, which were more predicated on offense, Crown was intended to be the defensive purchase. By going 40 seconds without taking damage from champions, the same activation condition as Banshee's Veil, you would gain 75% damage mitigation for 1.5 seconds upon getting hit by champions again. Also, while the passive was active, you'd get bonus AP and also for 3 seconds after it broke. Simply put, this item was intended to be an answer to burst damage, and was honestly a welcome addition considering the time it came out, pre-season 12. Keep in mind the durability update didn't come out until later that year. 2021 was arguably the most one-shotty League has ever gotten, with champions blowing up each other left and right. So in defense of Riot, I understand why they brought this item in. Where things deteriorated though was that, kinda like Divine Sunderer, Crown was too good at what it did. First off, with the safeguard active, it would give up to 110 ability power, giving more offensive power than the actual offensive AP mythics in addition to the reduction. Second, 75% damage mitigation was flat out overkill, as ironic as that choice of wording is. You could have no defensive items except Crown, and that item alone could protect you from a 6-item assassin full comboing you with everything they had. So in reaction to the huge amounts of damage being dealt to everybody, they kind of overcorrected by making mages with this item virtually invincible. Even after they bounced it to be 40% for 2.5 seconds instead of 75 for 1.5, and even took away the free ability power, the whole point of mages, especially artillery mages, is that once again, they are meant to be squishy. Giving them essentially passive exhaust on the first enemy champion that struck them pretty much took away the one weakness they had. When a full-blown Rengar can't burst a 600 to 0, there's something wrong, and Rengar is the king of late-game one-shots. After taking Crown out of the game, they kind of reinstated it in the form of Celestial Opposition, making it so only supports could build it, and it would give no offensive stats. Tanks having this passive is a lot more tolerable because they were already durable to begin with. Letting your AP backline be immune to one-shots on the other hand, not so much. You know, even though people have a love-hate relationship with mythic items, if there's one thing I appreciated about this time period, it would be that they took a risk. They were willing to experiment with entirely crazy ideas that people never would have expected them to do, which might be why some players actually miss the mythic item system. I really do hope they bring something big in 2027 because over the past few years, they've been too conservative in my opinion, although role quests were a cool addition to the game this year. Either way, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below on the items I chose, whether you think they should be added back to the game or not. For the time being, if you enjoyed the video, I would appreciate it if you'd like to like and subscribe. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter @Vars, join my Discord server, and check out my other item discussion videos if you haven't yet. But till next time, thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. Take care.